So our big topic of the week, and like I said earlier, Sam is here to talk about more games, basically, because we have a half-year review. I'm going to blast through what Nintendo, or at least Nintendo published games, have done up to the end of June. And on January the 3rd, we had Dr. Kawashima's Brain Training. January the 17th, Tokyo Mirage Sessions Sharp FE Encore, just in case we've forgotten. February the 12th, Pokemon Home came out. March the 6th, Pokemon Mystery Dungeon Rescue Team DX. March the 20th, Animal Crossing New Horizons. March the 26th, Good Job. May the 29th, there's a big gap there, Xenoblade Chronicles Definitive Edition. June the 5th, 51 Worldwide Games. June the 16th, Jump Rope Challenge. And the next game on Nintendo's published lineup will be on July the 17th, Paper Mario The Origami King. Greg, is there anything you picked up from that list that you'd like to talk about first of all? How's Nintendo's year been so far?
Yeesh. For me, it's not a particularly inspiring list. Obviously, Animal Crossing is the one that I have from that list. I also have 51 Worldwide Games, and I downloaded Jump Rope Challenge, but still haven't jumped into it. Animal Crossing there, coming on March the 20th. I got it a couple of weeks after that, but before that time, I hadn't really played the Switch that much actually throughout the whole year, and I only really got Animal Crossing because I wanted something to play on the Switch to try and get me lured back into the Switch, and it basically did its job. I put 45 hours into it. I kind of enjoyed it to a point, and then just kind of reached my limit with it, and I have no desire to return to it. But it has done its job in the fact that it got me playing the Switch quite a lot again. But it's more been about playing games that I already have on the backlog, and maybe picking up games from previous years, not really anything that's come out this year. So yeah, for me it's actually been a pretty weak lineup so far, unfortunately.
Sam, do you find yourself in a similar situation for the Switch?
Yeah, I definitely say so. I mean, there's only really been a few standout titles from that list. I mean, probably the most standout title, aside from Xenoblade Chronicles Definitive Edition, because obviously that's that's support, just who I haven't gone into. But Pokemon Mystery Dungeon, that's an entry in the series that I hadn't invested a huge amount of time in before. But it's surprisingly good for a remake. And again, I ended up putting in a few hours, nothing like I thought I would, but it's a game I could probably see myself returning to. But I think they did a really good job with that. I mean, probably even better than the main series game, for me personally.
I love the art style on it.
Yeah, it's got a really great art style, and just the whole mystery dungeon mechanic. I mean, it's one of those things, you're probably either going to like it or you're not going to like it so much. But I'd say it's worth giving a try. But aside from that, Animal Crossing, I knew it would happen. I got the game, played it for a few weeks. We made some videos on it as well. But really, it's about that community spirit. If you're partaking in it and you're visiting other people's islands and everything, I can see it being a hugely engrossing time sink. But if it doesn't click for you after a while, or if you kind of lose interest in certain elements, I think the drop-off is kind of inevitable, really. You've either got the drive to go back to it to improve your island, or you haven't, I think. But, we'll see. There'll be more updates, I'm sure. There haven't been many updates recently that have enticed me back. I've probably missed several events, but I can see it, with it being one of those games that you're supposed to play a little bit every day. I can see where the appeal is, but for me the same things happened with every Animal Crossing game. It's just a game you buy, you get really hooked on the premise of it, the idea of it, of what it might promise in the future, and then you kind of start realising all the limitations of it. And in this version, I think what literally broke it for me was the breakable items, where you've got to craft them each time. I think once you reach a certain level, when you get those, that gold shovel or whatnot, it really shouldn't be breaking, because it just makes the whole thing, a bit of a chore to play, really, because you're going into the game to do chores to improve the virtual area around you. And I get it's kind of meant to be like a kind of sandbox type thing where you make your own area and everything, but I don't know. I think there are several improvements, and I know I've noticed a lot of people on the forum have said the same thing. There are several quality of life improvements which could and really should be implemented, if they want to keep people coming back, because they got something special with it. But at the same time, if you're not really infused with the thought of coming back to it, it's a game which should have quite a bit of longevity, but I think it can be one extreme or the other, really. I've seen people play it for hundreds of hours. Myself, I'm not even sure if I've put maybe 30 or 40 hours into it. But, good on Nintendo for getting out there and improving on it in many respects and keeping the series going. Visually, it's probably the best it's ever been.
It's gorgeous, yeah.
Mm.
I think I'd be in the same boat as well if I purchased it, which I didn't. I think I'd fallen off by now, and I wouldn't be looking at it. The only two that I've picked up out of all those, and I was looking at Dr. Kawashima's Brain Training early in January, and then decided to clear the backlog instead. So that's something I haven't even gone back to. I also am very interested in Good Job if that ever gets on an eShop sale. All through the year until June the 5th, I didn't pick up a single Nintendo game. 51 Worldwide Games was my first one, and then Jump Rope Challenge obviously being the free one, and I've only played that once. I am enjoying 51 Worldwide Games, but very sporadically. It tends to be that kind of, I'll have a card game now. It's filler. But that's what I was expecting it to be. It's, hey, my son's Morgan. Hey, Morgs, do you want a quick game of Ludo or backgammon? And we'll just stick it on, have a quick game, and it's something to do rather than, it's not a game that we'd sit down and play for hours. Or it's not that kind of game. So it's done what it said it should do and what I thought it would do, but it still left me feeling a little cold. And looking at that list as well, I am still feeling a little cold. So I think, just like myself and you two boys as well, we've been playing a lot of other games. Games that have not come out in 2020. They came out previously, clearing the backlog, like I said, and not Nintendo games. So Greg, what have you been playing? Any outstanding games?
Well, I was actually going to say, the time sink involved with Animal Crossing is part of the reason maybe that it has completely dropped off with me. It's like, you could be putting that time into obviously clearing the backlog, and I think you've finished maybe over 50 games this year. Is that right?
Something just checking. I'm 48 at the moment.
48, yep. You sort of look at that and think, how many of those would you actually have finished if you had bought Animal Crossing and spent time planting stuff and and whatnot? Because I say, I spent, I think, 40 to 45 hours, and I kind of wonder what I really achieved from that time. I certainly didn't hate my time with it. I actually enjoyed it to a point, but I sort of come away from it thinking, what was the purpose? I sort of prefer games with an end goal, you get to the end and then it's done, and one game that I did actually, for me, is actually Game of the Year contender material, and I'd actually for some reason kind of forgot about it. So it's one that I did buy this year and play this year, Streets of Rage 4, which I know Sam is pretty fond of as well. It's just such a good update on the original Streets of Rage games, just almost perfectly captures it, to be honest. So that has been a positive this year. Apart from that, I kind of I started the year actually playing Super Monkey Ball, the Banana Blitz HD, which came out towards the tail end of last year, but I got it for Christmas and kind of played it into January a wee bit, and it was okay again to a point, and then it just became extremely frustrating. It had that thing that Monkey Ball games just haven't been able to capture since the original one for me. It's just the level design becomes kind of too random and too frustrating, and it's not really about skill all the time. It's more, there's just these elements that sort of throw a wee bit of luck into the balance, and it becomes so irritating. I'm trying to actually think about what else I maybe cleared this year, because obviously I mentioned there WRC8, which again, it came out last year, so I've just been finishing it off. I've been playing FIFA 20, which I picked up. Again, they're not outstanding titles, they're just they're decent enough. Like they sort of fill the time in. Yeah, well, obviously we played a wee bit of Ollie Ollie as well between us.
We need to get
doing
back
the
to
daily
that.
grind, but that's yeah, it's kind of just fell by the wayside now. Like you, 51 Worldwide Games. Like I whenever I got it, like I was reluctant to buy it beforehand, and played it a wee bit. But I actually, to be honest, I haven't touched it for a few weeks now. But yeah, I have been catching up more on the backlog probably the last couple of weeks. Really, obviously I spoke about it a few weeks ago. The Gardens Between, which is, to be honest, because of how weak this year has been so far, it's probably been one of the highlights of the year. But yeah, apart from that, like there's nothing majorly stand out apart from, I would say, Streets of Rage 4.
I don't think I have a 2020 game, a game that came out in 2020 that would be in my top 10. It's just everything is basically either clearing the backlog or picking up in a sale that was, from a couple of years ago. Same year. How about you, Sam?
Yeah, as Greg said, I think it's a case of Streets of Rage 4. It's basically, well, it saved 2020 in terms of gaming for me. I mean, God, it's just such a fantastic game. And for it to come out, 25, 26 years, from the originals, and for, those 3 different teams to actually come together and make this, the best possible Streets of Rage entry it could be in 2020 is it's a phenomenal achievement. I mean, just from the, the art style, the soundtrack, which, it's perfectly, synced up with the gameplay as well. Just in that first stage where you're going through, going through those familiar rain-soaked, neon lit streets, and you're going across and down, and you get to that section where, there's a car that comes and crashes into the side of a building, and then all of a sudden, the music changes, from one section of the soundtrack to another, and, it just really kind of carries you through it as you're going up, racking up combos. It's very much a co-op game as well. You can enjoy it in single player, but I think it really comes into its own co-op. Been playing it a lot that way, only online, and fortunately the online's been pretty stable with that.
Excellent.
But it's a game that I'd very much like to one day probably sit down and play with up to 2 to 4 players in that local co-op, because I think that'll really bring it to life another way.
Online is only 2 players co-op, isn't it? Yeah,
it is only 2 players co-op, but I think that's probably all they can manage with online. I'm impressed that they've actually managed to get it to such a degree that it is very much playable, because they did have some issues on some of the servers of the consoles for it, but they have addressed those. It's now very stable most of the time. Obviously your mileage will vary depending on where you are in the world and who you're playing with, but yeah, I've had many solid games of it online. They've rebalanced it. The boss battles they've adjusted them. You probably only notice if you played it towards the beginning of when it came out and recently, but I think about a month or so back there was some kind of balancing patch where you'd be playing against a boss battle. You're playing in a boss battle, and then all of a sudden you get more additional enemies come in that they weren't there previously. And some of the boss battles did feel a bit, not really easy, but not quite as challenging as they could be. So now that they've adjusted that, I think that does make a difference. But probably what makes more of a difference is they've overhauled the combo system a bit. They've just improved it, because before it was very difficult to continue a combo from one screen to the other. You transition from one screen to the next and you lose your combo, just by walking in between the 2 screens. But now they've extended the timer on that. So say if you've got, 34 hits on one screen, then you go on and carry on, and then you rack up another combo, and all of a sudden you're up to 70, and beyond, because of that change in the timing, and the fact that if you pick up an item or if you break an item, that counts towards your combo as well. Because I think that's a big thing they've introduced with the combo meter, because that does affect your score. And if you're going through without using all the assists, then that's what you're going to keep coming back to. Boosting the score with the combos and trying to get those better grades, going for those S ranks and whatnot. And it's very challenging. I haven't a hope of clearing the game on mania or anything like that. I've basically just been sticking to like normal and hard, because it really ramps up significantly. But it's just it's just a joy to play the game. The game is all the levels have been really well thought out. And yeah, it's just one of those games where you gain more of an appreciation for it, I think, the more time you put into it. So I would urge anyone who's maybe only played it a couple of times, just when you're lost of thinking of what to play, if you got Streets of Rage, just fire it up, and you might be pleasantly surprised by it.
I need to pick it up, and I will pick it up. It is on my wish list, and if there's ever a tiny bit of a sale, it'll be, I might even pick it up before that. Who knows? For myself, I'm going to mention a couple of games quickly. In February, I did a review for Hypercharged Unboxed. I bang on about this all the time, but this really is a wonderful mashup of tower defense and first-person shooting. In a Toy Story world, you're an action man, basically, and waves of recognizable old toys we would have played with in the 80s and 90s, from green plastic army men through to Stretch Armstrong in kind of zombie mode. Those big T-Rexes that used to use batteries and then slide across your carpet. One Christmas my brother had. Everything is recognizable in the game. Hasn't got the real names, of course. There's a Castle Grayskull, for example, and it's identical to Castle Grayskull, except it's called something else. The entirety of the game is a delight to play, runs well on the Switch. You've got a 4-player local co-op there as well, so if you want to chop your TV up into 4 segments, it still runs pretty well. Not as obviously as good as single player or 2-player split, but 30 frames a second, it pretty much holds it throughout, and it's drop in, drop out online as well. So me and my son can be playing split screen, and then 2 other people can just join us online anytime. We've had so much fun, and I need to get back to it, and I need to be doing some Let's Plays for this, and I'm sure we will in the future. I was very, very delighted that Wargroove, a game I loved in 2019, it was my game of the year. The DLC came out in February. I think I got around to it towards the end of February. The DLC was called Double Trouble. That got me back in. If nobody's picked up Wargroove and you like that kind of Advanced Wars kind of game, this is there. And it's got so much content, it's unbelievable. In March, I pushed on to Hotline Miami, twin stick, top down, and I've talked about this on the podcast before. That is really, really well done. And Hotline Miami 2 as well. It comes in the collection on the Switch if you purchase it. 2 fantastic games. The second one just takes it to another level, and I love the first one itself. And a first-person shooter, Bulletstorm Duke of Switch Edition I played. While I wasn't expecting too much, it was so enjoyable throughout the entirety of the game. The kind of combo-based system in a first-person shooter, by linking your kind of physical attacks and your long-range attacks together and killing people in inventive ways. You can rack up high scores, and you can gain extra health and bullets and everything like that by doing it. Really, really fantastic first-person shooter, that, by Gearbox. And I played through it as the Duke himself, Duke Nukem. He got a little bit tedious and tiresome, but as you would imagine with the Duke's one-liners, but got through it. And that took me through to March. I do have a few more. Greg, do you have any?
No, not really. I would just say, like, we've all been kind of harsh on this year, really, but it's almost like it feels like an almost necessary reprieve from games, because it's given us a chance to play these other games. Because, like, I do want to go back and, like, I want to finish, like, Splatoon 2, and I want to do the DLC levels in Captain Toad, for example. I have been feeling an urge to go back and play Breath of the Wild again, and Super Mario Odyssey. But also, even, like, obviously we're doing, like, the 30-day challenge at the minute on the forums, and for my 3D platformer, my favourite one, and what I consider as my favourite game ever, Super Mario Galaxy 2, I've actually only ever beaten it once. I've played many Mario games, like, multiple times, and I'm starting to feel a wee bit, like, nervous about claiming that as, like, my favourite game of all time, when, like I'm basically going, like, from the memory of, like, having just beat it on the way after it came out. Like, as soon as I finished, I thought this is like my favorite game ever, I think. Like, and before that, I think Super Mario Galaxy had the title, but then the sequel came out. I thought, this is even better. But, like, obviously we've had a few Mario games since then, and, like, I don't think Odyssey is my favourite, despite like it is a great game and all. I don't think it is my favourite Mario game. 3D World was fantastic, but I need to go back and play Galaxy 2 again just to see how I feel about it now and see if I can recapture it, because like I really do want to play it again. It's just finding that opportunity, really.
Let's hope it comes to the Switch then.
Yes.
Sam, any final mentions before we say goodbye?
I haven't actually played a huge amount of games from the ones mentioned, but what I will say, I will put out a special mention to Bug Fables, because it looks like it's the game which is doing what the new Paper Mario game perhaps won't. We'll have to see. But it feels to me, from what I played of it, that it's very much like that old style Paper Mario game that I really really enjoyed. So you've got all the badges and whatnot, or badges and medals. They interchange between the two. I think there's medals in Paper Mario, so yeah, badges in this. But you got so many different badges you can collect, which will obviously change your stats and whatnot. I think Glenn I brought up an interesting point though on the forum. In the original games, the increase you'd get was about 5 HP in Paper Mario.
Yeah, so every time you leveled up, yeah.
Yeah, so it feels the gains you get for adding on HP seem even more minuscule, which makes you want to put even more into the badges and just kind of experiment with that. And then you've also got the hard mode badge, which you can equip, which might not be worth using for the majority of the game, but definitely seems worth putting on for bosses. But apart from that, it's just the way the world's been designed, and it's got a really great art style, and just the bug theme of it, and the fact that you've got those 3 characters that work really well together. I think the writing for that's been absolutely spot on, and you couldn't really ask for a more charming RPG really. It's just really good. It's just when I was playing it brought back a lot of those good memories of playing the early Paper Mario games. But it is its own thing. I know it's almost impossible not to compare it, but I think it's a very, very solid RPG. It's got decent story. When you're playing it, you actually want to make some progress in it, and it's got side quests that you actually want to play, not so much for the fact that they're fetch quests, but just for the surrounding lore. I seem to remember there's one about books, because there's a library in there. There's also several books spread throughout the land, including terrible ones, actual terrible books. There's this bug that wants you to go and find terrible books, because he considers himself like a connoisseur of this inferior literature. It's just the way it's written. You kind of have to see it in the context of the game. The writing behind it is just really well thought out, and it just kind of spurs you on to keep going with it.
I can't wait to see the reviews between Paper Mario and Bug Fables and compare. I know maybe we shouldn't be comparing them, but Bug Fables has had some really considerable positive reviews.
Yeah, I think it's going to be very hard not to make that comparison again, and I think it's good. So it's nice that we've actually got both games within the same year on the Switch. So I think that's you basically let the consumer decide.
So for me, 2020 has been a fantastic year of gaming. I mean, those 48 games that I finished, that's not everything I've played. I'm still playing through Borderlands, and I'm loving it, actually. If you see my playthrough, my son. We just finished our 5th episode, recording our 5th episode, that is. I think we got 3 episodes published on the YouTube channel, and just, I've loved playing games. Unfortunately, Borderlands is a 2020 game, isn't it? Of course. There we are. That's my game of the year so far. So it's a wonderful year for games. It's just most of them have come from somewhere else in time. And I think that's like all of us. So if we got nothing else to add...
Nope, I'm good.
That's it for this week, boys. Thank you, Greg, for joining us as usual, and thank you, Sam.
Thank you.
It's been an absolute pleasure. We hope you come back soon. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to hit the subscribe button and give us a like if you've enjoyed our content. You can also check out our other great content on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and the N-E Café podcast from all good podcast providers. Just follow the links in the description below.